Some places are meant for prayer. Some places are meant for silence. And some places should never make you turn around when you hear someone call your name. Hang Duong Cemetery, Con Dao. By day, it is calm beneath the trees, beneath the drifting incense smoke, beneath the quiet footsteps of visitors who come to bow their heads. But when night falls, when the wind comes in from the sea and moves through the old casuarina trees, when the smell of incense suddenly grows heavy even though no one has just lit a stick, and when a whisper calls the exact name of someone still alive, that is when people begin to understand something. Some spirits do not need to show themselves. They only need to call once. And if the person they call turns around, that person's story no longer belongs completely to the present. Hang Duong Cemetery is located in the center of Con Dao District in Barrio Vung Tau Province, Vietnam. It is one of the most important historical and spiritual sites in the archipelago. It is the resting place of thousands of revolutionary soldiers, political prisoners, and patriotic Vietnamese people who were imprisoned, exiled, and killed during more than a century of struggle for national independence. To many Vietnamese people, Hang Duong is not simply a cemetery. It is memory. It is grief. It is a place where the living come to honor those who died inside what was once called the earthly hell of Con Dao prison. But beside the real history, there are also strange stories passed from one visitor to another. Some people say they have heard whispers there at night. Some say they have smelled an unusually strong fragrance near the graves after midnight, even when no one nearby had just burned incense. And there is one warning that locals tend to repeat in a very quiet voice. If you visit Hang Duong at night, go with a sincere heart. Do not joke around. Do not call each other's names too loudly. And if you hear someone calling from behind you, do not answer too quickly.
Min did not believe in ghosts. He worked as a freelance sound recordist in Ho Chi Minh City. His job took him from place to place, capturing environmental audio for documentaries, podcasts, and horror stories. Rain falling on a sheet metal roof, tires grinding over a mountain pass, a church bell at dawn, waves breaking against black stone. To Min, sound was only vibration. With a good microphone, good headphones, and enough time in post-production, almost anything could be explained. That was what he believed until an old memory card arrived at his studio. There was no sender's name, no return address, only a pale yellow envelope containing a micro SD card wrapped in a piece of yellowed notebook paper. On the paper, someone had written one line by hand. If you work with sound, please listen to this for me. Do not open the last file after midnight. Min laughed when he read it. He assumed it was a prank from someone who followed one of the horror audio channels he had worked with. That evening, after a cold box dinner, he plugged the memory card into his computer. There were 4 audio files on it. The first 3 contained wind, ocean waves, and footsteps on stone. Nothing unusual. But the 4th file had a strange name. Hang_Duong_00H17.wave. Min checked the clock. 11:48 p.m. He remembered the warning not to open the last file after midnight. And because he did not believe in warnings like that, he put on his headphones and pressed play. First, there was only a low wind. Then came the rustle of leaves. Then the sound of someone breathing. Whoever had recorded the file was walking very slowly, trying to hide their own breath. After about a minute, a woman's voice came through the static. It was soft, neither near nor far. Do not step beyond that line of trees. Min frowned and raised the volume. The wind hissed and broke apart. Then the whisper returned. This time it was clearer. Do not let it know your name. Min sat up straight. In the headphones, the footsteps stopped. The person who had recorded the file seemed to be standing completely still. Then, from very far away, a man's voice called out. Min. He tore the headphones off his ears. The room was silent. The air conditioner still hummed. The desk lamp still burned. Outside the window, traffic moved along the narrow street below his apartment building. Min looked back at the screen. The file was still playing. The waveform moved normally. He told himself it had to be a coincidence. Min was a common name. There was nothing to be afraid of. But when he put the headphones back on, the voice in the file spoke again. This time it was closer, clearer, and slower. Nguyen Hoang Minh. His entire body went cold. That was his full name. A name the person who mailed the card could not have known, unless they knew him personally. He immediately stopped the file and pulled out the memory card. But the moment the computer screen went dark, his phone lit up. A message had arrived from an unknown number. It said only this: "You listened. Now you have to go to Hang Duong." 3 days later, Min was in Con Dao. He told himself the trip was for work. A client was producing a documentary about Con Dao's memory and needed atmospheric sound from Hang Duong Cemetery at night. Min would record the soundscape and, while he was there, look into the memory card. Nothing more. The plane landed in Con Dao on a windy afternoon. From above, the sea had been impossibly blue, wrapped around dark mountains like a quiet arm. But as soon as Min stepped out of the airport, he felt something strange. Not fear. More like recognition. As if he had heard this wind before. As if he had smelled this salt air before. As if he had once stood in this place, even though this was the first time in his life he had ever set foot on the island. The taxi driver who picked him up was a man in his 50s with sun-darkened skin and a slow, low voice. His name was Locke. When Min said he wanted to record inside Hang Duong Cemetery at night, Locke did not ask many questions. He only looked at Min through the rearview mirror and said, "You can go. But night there is not like night anywhere else." Min smiled lightly. "You believe those stories too?" Locke did not smile. "It is not about belief," he said. "In Con Dao, there are things you do not need to prove." The taxi moved along quiet roads. Mountains on one side, sea on the other. The houses were sparse, the air clean, and everything looked peaceful in a way that felt almost staged. But when the car passed the old Con Dao prison area, Locke slowed down. Min looked out the window. Moss-dark walls stood beyond the trees. Silent. Still. No one was there. Yet Min suddenly heard a very faint sound, like fingernails scraping against an iron door. He turned to the driver. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" "A sound, like scratching." Locke said nothing for a few seconds. Then he kept his eyes on the road and answered, "Maybe wind moving through a crack in the wall." Min knew he was avoiding the subject. That night, after checking into a small guest house near the town center, Min carried his recording gear to Hang Duong Cemetery. Outside the gate, several people sold flowers and incense. The streetlights were a pale yellow, and the wind made the bundles of white chrysanthemums tremble. An elderly woman sat beside a small wooden table. Her hair was almost entirely silver. Her face was worn, but her eyes were very bright. She called him over. "Are you here to pay respects, son?" "Yes," Min said. "I am here to record some documentary sound. I also want to light incense." She gave him a bundle of incense and a small bouquet of white flowers. When Min handed her the money, her fingers brushed his hand. She froze. Then she looked at him for a long time. "What is your name?" Min was surprised.
Minh.
"Your full name?" He hesitated.
Nguyễn Hoang Minh.
As soon as she heard it, the woman's face changed. It was not exactly fear. It was not exactly pity. It was something in between. She lowered the incense back onto the table and spoke more quietly. "Do not go too deep tonight." "Why not?" The old woman did not answer right away. She looked at him as if she were looking at someone who had already walked farther than he should have. "Someone has been waiting for you here for a long time." Min forced a small laugh. "That is a frightening thing to say." She did not laugh. "Not everyone who is called should answer." The sentence was exactly like the warning in the audio file. Min immediately asked, "Do you know who sent me that memory card?" She shook her head. But her eyes said she knew more than she was willing to say. Before Min stepped through the gate, the old woman called after him. "If you smell incense very strongly but see no smoke, stop where you are. Do not keep walking." Min turned back. "Why?" The wind moved through the trees. Her figure blurred into the yellow light. "Because when that happens, it is not the living who are burning it." Hang Duong Cemetery at night was not like any cemetery Min had ever known. It did not feel abandoned. It did not feel neglected. It was clean, solemn, and quiet. Walkways ran between rows of graves. The lights were bright enough to show the path, but not bright enough to chase all the darkness out from under the trees. Incense smoke lingered in the air. There was the smell of fresh flowers, wet earth, and wind from the sea. Min set up a microphone near an empty walkway and checked the signal through his headphones. The sound was beautiful. Wind through the casuarina trees formed a thin, deep bed of sound that stretched like breathing. Now and then, a dry leaf rolled across the tile. Far away, visitors murmured near the graves. Min checked the time. 10:36 p.m. Still early. He began recording. For the first half hour, everything was normal. Min walked slowly through the cemetery and remained respectful. He did not film close-up images of names on graves. He did not read the names aloud. He did not joke. He reminded himself he had come only to capture the atmosphere. But when the clock reached 11:17 p.m., a small click snapped inside his headphones. Interference. Min stopped and checked the cable. Nothing was wrong. Then he heard whispering. Very faint. Like two people speaking behind a row of trees. He lifted one side of the headphones from his ear. Outside the headphones, everything was silent. He put them back on. The whispering was still there. It was not clear Vietnamese. It was not wind. It sounded like many people talking at once in a room far away, on the other side of a thick wall. Min turned the microphone toward the sound. The waveform jumped. He swallowed. Is someone there? No one answered. Only the wind. Then a very strong fragrance moved toward him. Not ordinary incense. An old fragrance, dense, warm, like a large bundle of incense had just been lit in a closed room. Min looked around. There was no smoke. No person nearby. Every incense bowl around him had already burned down. He remembered the old woman's warning. If you smell incense very strongly but see no smoke, stop where you are. Do not keep walking. Min stood still, but the whispering in his headphones grew clearer. This time, a woman's voice separated itself from all the others. You came.
Minh phô rơi.
Not because of the words, because of the voice. It sounded like his mother. Min's mother had died 7 years earlier after a long illness. Near the end, she had barely been able to speak clearly, but this voice sounded like hers when she was young, like the voice on the old tapes his family still kept. Min pulled off the headphones. His heart hammered. Outside, the wind moved through the casuarina trees. There was no one there. He put the headphones back on. The woman's voice continued. Do not let them call your name.
Minh stipet bắt quát.
At that exact moment, a man's voice spoke behind him.
Nguyễn Hoang Minh.
Not through the headphones. Not through the recorder. The sound was real. Very close. Min spun around. A man stood about 10 meters away beneath the shadow of a casuarina tree. He wore a white shirt and dark pants. He was tall and thin. His head was slightly lowered. The cemetery light did not reveal his face.
Minh sợ breathing quýt keng.
Who are you? The man did not answer. He simply turned away and walked slowly down a smaller path on the right. Min knew he should not follow. But the man was holding something in one hand. An old brown handkerchief. It looked exactly like the one Min's mother had kept inside a wooden box, the one she always said had belonged to his grandfather. Min gripped his recorder and followed. The narrow path led him into a quieter section of the cemetery. The farther he walked, the stronger the incense became. The air turned noticeably colder. Min called out, "Hey, stop." The man ahead of him did not turn around. His steps were slow, but Min could not catch up. At times, the man seemed only a few meters away. But whenever Min quickened his pace, the distance stretched again, as if the path between them were lengthening inside the dark. Then the man stopped in front of a grave. Min stopped too. The grave stood beneath the trees, neat and clean, with fresh flowers and a few burned down incense sticks. Min raised his small flashlight. The name on the stone made him freeze. It was not a family name. It was not the name of anyone Min knew. It was a stranger's name, Tran Van Hoa. Under it were the years of birth and death. Before Min could understand, the man in the white shirt vanished. There were no footsteps, no shadow leaving the path, only the brown handkerchief lying on the edge of the grave. Min stood there for a long time before daring to bend down and pick it up. The handkerchief was old, its fabric worn thin. Inside it was a small notebook wrapped in oil paper, the kind of notebook that belonged to another era. There was no name on the cover. Only one faded line of writing. Do not let the child carry my family name. Min felt his scalp tighten. He opened the first page. The handwriting leaned to one side, the ink nearly faded away. The entries were short like a journal. Some pages held only a few sentences. Today they brought more people into the camp. One young woman was holding her pregnant belly. She did not cry. She only asked whether, if she died here, her child would be buried with her. Min turned the page. The child was born on a rainy night. No one dared to cry loudly. We wrapped him in torn cloth. He had done nothing wrong. Min's hands began to shake. He turned another page. I do not know how much longer I will live. If anyone gets out of here, please take the baby away. Do not let him grow up with a name that can be hunted. A sudden gust of wind tore through the trees. The pages shivered in his hands. Min held the notebook tighter. On the last page, one line had been written in a hurried hand. Her name is Lon. The child has no name yet. Whoever receives him, give him a new name. But when he is old enough, bring him back to Hang Duong. Someone is waiting. Min nearly stopped breathing. His mother's name was Lon, but she had been born in Saigon. That was what the family had always said. His grandmother had died early. His grandfather, according to family stories, had died somewhere in the war with no known grave. Everything had always been vague. Everything had always been missing documents. Min had thought that was simply what war did to families. But this notebook, this handkerchief, this voice in the headphones, all of it felt like old bones being uncovered from the soil. Min pulled out his phone and called Locke. No signal. He called the guest house. No signal. The screen showed 11:58 p.m. 2 minutes until midnight. Behind him, the whispering rose. This time it was not coming through the headphones. Many voices, many breaths, many syllables overlapping. One sentence repeated again and again. Give the name back. Give the name back. Give the name back. Min held the notebook against his chest and ran back toward the main path. He had no idea how long he ran. The rows of trees looked the same. The turns looked the same. The pale yellow lights repeated over and over, as if he had become trapped inside a loop. Every time he thought he was near the gate, another row of graves appeared in front of him. The incense smell grew stronger and stronger until he could hardly breathe. Then he saw a security guard standing at the end of the path. The man held a flashlight. He was short and broad-shouldered. Min ran to him in relief. "Sir, please help me." The guard turned around. He looked about 60, with a stern face that was not unkind. He looked at the notebook in Min's hand, then glanced around. "Where did you get that?" "Someone led me to a grave," Min said, gasping for air. "I don't know what is happening." The guard was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Follow me. Do not look to either side." Min stayed close behind him. The guard's flashlight shone only on the ground ahead, a small circle of light around their feet. On both sides of the path, Min heard people speaking. Men, women, children. Some called his name. Some called another name. Little N. And come here. Come home. Min clenched his jaw and did not look. The guard walked ahead and spoke quietly. "It is normal for the living to fear the dead, but here, the dead are not as frightening as the things the living try to forget." Min asked, Do you know what this notebook is? Yes. Do you know who I am? The guard did not answer right away. They passed through a corridor of strong wind. Casuarina leaves fell and spun across the tiled path. After a while, the guard said, some people were taken away from Con Dao when they were too young to remember. Some grew up with new names, new families, and new lives. Not to betray the past, to survive it. Min's spine went cold. You mean my mother? The guard stopped. He turned just enough for Min to see half his face. Not only your mother. Before Min could ask anything else, the cemetery gate appeared ahead. The streetlights outside made him feel as if his lungs had opened again. The elderly incense seller was still sitting there. Locke, the taxi driver, stood beside her. Both of them looked as if they had been waiting for him for a long time. Min rushed through the gate and bent over, gasping. When he turned back, the guard was no longer behind him. Where is the guard? Min asked. The old woman looked into the cemetery. What guard? The one who just brought me out. Around 60. Security uniform. Flashlight. Locke's face went pale. The old woman placed one hand on the incense table. You mean Uncle Ba Din?
Mình nốt đét.
He died 3 years ago, she said. The air around the gate seemed to freeze. Min looked back into the dark walkway inside the cemetery. The lights were still burning. The trees still moved. No one stood there. Locke said softly, when he was alive, he guarded this place for more than 20 years. Anyone who got lost at night, he would bring back to the gate. Since he passed, people still say he sometimes leads them out. Min could not speak. The old woman looked at the notebook in his hand. So they finally gave it to you. Who gave it? She did not answer. Instead, she asked, did you hear what name they were calling? Min remembered, and his throat tightened. The old woman closed her eyes. Then it is true. Who isn't? When she opened her eyes again, they were wet. That was your first name. Min did not remember sitting down on the plastic chair outside the cemetery gate. Every sound around him became distant. A motorbike passing on the road, the wind, the dry breath of Locke beside him. The old incense seller poured him a glass of water. Her hand trembled slightly. You were not born in Saigon, she said. You were born on Con Dao soil. Min shook his head. That is impossible. My birth certificate. Documents can be remade, she said. People who survived those years sometimes had to change names, change hometowns, even change family lines. Not because they wanted to forget, because if they did not disappear on paper, they might not survive in life. Min gripped the notebook. Did my mother know? The old woman nodded. She knew, but she was afraid to tell you. Why? Because she was afraid you would come back. The answer cut into him. Afraid I would come back to the cemetery? The old woman looked directly at him. Afraid you would hear the call. Locke stood nearby holding an unlit cigarette between his fingers. He kept looking at the ground. The old woman continued. In those final years of a violent time, a woman named Lan was sent to Con Dao with a group of political prisoners. She was pregnant. No one knew for certain who the child's father was. Some said he had died before she was arrested. Some said he was still in another prison camp. Some said his real name was never recorded. The child was born on a rainy night.
No papers, no cradle, no joifel cries.
Only a few imprisoned women tearing old clothing into strips and passing the baby from arm to arm to keep him warm. A prisoner named Tran Van Hoa wrote the story down in a small notebook. He was not the child's father, but he was the one who found a way to get the child out. When a rare chance came, the baby was handed to a woman working outside the camp and eventually taken back to the mainland. His first name was a simple name. Because inside hell, all anyone wanted was for a child to live in peace. By then, tears had begun to fall down Min's face. So my mother, your mother was that baby, the old woman said. Min looked up sharply. The old woman looked at him for a long time.
No, son.
You are the next generation, but the name N was not only for your mother. It was a name promised for the first child of that bloodline. Your mother did not use it. She gave it to you while you were still in her womb. Then she changed her mind. I was named in? Yes. Why did she change it? The old woman looked into the cemetery. Because on the night before she filed your birth certificate, she dreamed that someone was standing at the foot of her bed. That person said, if you name him and one day Hang Duong will call him back.
Mình suốt đời.
Locke finally spoke. Your mother came here once, a long time ago. You were still small then. Min turned to him. You knew my mother?
Locke nodded.
I drove her from the airport to the cemetery. She burned incense all night. When she came back to the car, she was crying. She told me that if a young man named Min ever came here asking questions, I should not let him enter the cemetery at midnight. Min felt his heart being squeezed. She never told me. Some mothers hide the truth not because they want to lie, the old woman said, but because they believe silence is the last way they can protect their children. Min touched the memory card in his pocket. Then who sent this to me? The old woman shook her head. Not me. Locke shook his head too. The wind suddenly stopped. Everything became unnaturally silent. Min checked the time. 12:17 a.m. The exact time in the file name. From inside the cemetery, a voice called out. Not loudly, but so clearly that all three of them heard it. The old woman stood up so fast the chair scraped the pavement. Locke grabbed Min's arm. Do not answer. But the voice did not stop. Your mother is waiting. Min went completely still. It was his mother's voice. No longer in the headphones, no longer inside memory. Came from inside Hang Duong. No one stopped Min in time. He pulled free from Locke, clutched the notebook, and rushed through the gate. The old woman called after him, her voice nearly breaking. Do not follow the voice. But Min did not stop. He knew he was doing something foolish. He knew the warnings had been given for a reason. But if that voice was truly his mother's, if for 7 years she had carried something she had not been able to say, he could not remain outside the gate. Inside the cemetery, the air was cold enough to hurt his skin. Every path looked different now. The lights were dimmer, the trees seemed taller, the graves pulled back into darkness. Min ran and called, Mom. The moment the word left his mouth, hundreds of whispers answered at once. Mom. 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 The voices imitated him, stretching and warping the sound, as if the cemetery had learned the shape of a living voice. Min stopped, panting. The incense smell became so strong that his eyes began to burn. Ahead, a woman's figure appeared in the walkway. She wore a pale AO dye. Her hair was pinned at the back of her neck. She was thin. Min recognized her immediately. Mom. The woman stood with her back to him. You grew up, she said. Her voice was gentle. It was his mother's voice. Min stepped forward. Mom, what is all of this? Why didn't you tell me? The woman was silent. Then she turned her head slightly. He could not see her face clearly, only half of it inside the dark. Because I was afraid you would love the dead more than the living. Min's throat closed. I only want the truth. The truth is not in that notebook. He held it tighter. Then where is it? His mother's shadow raised one hand and pointed deeper into the cemetery. Where the first person called your name. Min looked in that direction. At the end of the path, the darkness was unusually thick. Even the cemetery lamps could not enter it. From there came the cry of a child. Very small, very weak. Like a newborn crying on a rainy night. His mother's shadow began walking toward it. Min followed. With every step, the world around him changed. The sound of wind became the slam of iron doors. The sound of leaves became the crack of a whip cutting the air. The sound of insects became the faint groans of people trying not to make noise. On both sides of the path, Min no longer saw a cemetery. He saw damp stone walls, iron bars, small rooms, thin hands gripping the cracks in doors. He knew this was not ordinary reality. But the smell of mold, dried blood, sweat, and cold sea air was so real that he nearly gagged. His mother's shadow stopped in front of a dark cell. Inside, a young woman held her pregnant belly. Several other imprisoned women surrounded her. No one spoke loudly. Everyone kept looking toward the door as if terrified of being discovered. Thunder rolled. A baby began to cry. Min stood outside the cell, trembling. He understood that he was seeing a memory that did not belong to him. The young woman held the baby against her chest and whispered, "Name him in." A thin man stood behind her, holding a small notebook. He looked down at the child. "No," he said, "that name will be remembered too easily." The woman cried without sound. "He has to have a name." The man looked toward the door. "Then keep it in your heart. Do not write it down. Do not let them know." Min looked closely at the man. It was the same figure he had seen in the cemetery. The man in the white shirt. Tren van Hoa, the writer of the notebook. The man who had gotten the child out of Con Dao. Then his mother's shadow spoke beside him. "Do you see now?" Min turned to her. "What do you want me to see?" "That some names are not meant to be called. Some names are promises." The scene rippled like water. The baby's cry faded. The young woman dissolved into darkness. The cell vanished. Min was standing in Hang Duong Cemetery again. In front of him was an unnamed grave. No stone,
No flowers.
only an old incense bowl. His mother's shadow stood beside it. "The person you are looking for is here," she said.
Mình nèn lét đau.
"Who?" "The one who called you back." From behind the grave, a whisper rose. Min closed his eyes. This time he did not run. He did not cover his ears. He asked, "Who are you?" The wind passed over him. A man's voice answered from very far away. Someone who never had the chance to be a father. Min opened his eyes. Beside the unnamed grave, the man in the white shirt appeared. He was no longer as blurred as before. His face was gaunt, his eyes deep, but his gaze was gentle. He was not frightening. He looked like someone who had been waiting for too long. Min's voice shook. "Were you the baby's father?" The man did not answer directly. He looked at the notebook in Min's hand. "In that notebook I wrote that I was not."
Mình nốt đét.
"Then why did you say?" "Because if I claimed him, they would look for him." Min felt his throat tighten. The man continued. "His mother was Lon. Lon and I promised each other that if the child lived, his name would be in. But when the baby was taken out, I had to let everyone believe he was not my blood. A child without a father could disappear more easily than a child whose father had a recorded name." Min looked at the unmarked grave. "And you?" "I died before I knew whether my child survived." Min shook his head. "But my mother was Lon. If that child was my mother, then you are..." He could not finish. The man looked at him. "Your grandfather." The wind stopped. Every whisper around them went silent. Only Min's heartbeat remained inside his chest. His grandfather. A man Min had known only through broken family stories. A shadow in the house, a missing place at the altar. Someone said to have died somewhere with no known grave. And now he was here, in Hang Duong, without a name, without a family marker, without anyone to call him by who he truly was. Min lowered his head. His tears fell onto the ground. "Why are you calling me now?" The man looked toward the trees. "Because the last person who remembers the story is beginning to forget."
Mình understood.
His mother was gone. The people who had lived through that time were disappearing one by one. The old incense seller was aging. Locke was not young anymore. If the notebook vanished, if the memory was not handed down, then this grave would remain nameless forever. Min asked who sent the memory card. The man did not answer. He only looked behind Min. Min turned around. The old incense seller stood a few steps away, but not as the elderly woman at the gate. In front of him was a young woman in old brown clothes, her hair braided behind her back, her eyes red from crying. She held a baby in her arms. Min recognized her instantly. It was the old woman in her youth, the woman who had carried the baby out of Con Dao, the woman who had kept the secret for a lifetime. The young woman looked at Min and whispered, "I did not send it." Then who did? His mother's shadow appeared beside her. She looked at Min with the tenderness he remembered from life. I did.
Mình phô rời.
You can't. You died. She smiled. Before I died, I asked someone to record the story, but I did not have the courage to send it to you. I was afraid you would hurt too much. After I died, the memory card stayed in a wooden box. It was found only when the house was cleared.
Mình dèm bét.
After his mother's funeral, he had packed her things too quickly. Some boxes went to relatives. Some belongings were lost. But who mailed it to my studio? His mother looked toward the grave. The living send objects, she said. The dead choose the moment. The sentence made Min shiver. He suddenly remembered the note in the envelope. Do not open the last file after midnight. It had not been meant to stop him from listening. It had been meant to make sure he listened at the right time. The right hour. The moment when the door between the present and memory opened a little. Min began to cry. Mom, why didn't you tell me while you were alive? His mother's shadow stepped closer, raising a hand as if to touch his face. But her fingers passed through empty air. Because I lived my whole life because of one lie, she said. I was afraid that if I told you, you would hate me for hiding it. I was afraid you would love the past so much that you would not be able to live in the present. Min shook his head. I don't hate you. I know, she said. That is why I called you home. The man in the white shirt bent down and placed his hand over the old incense bowl. A red ember appeared inside it, even though no one had lit anything. The incense fragrance spread out. This time Min was not afraid. Felt warm. The man said, "Read my name." Min looked at him. I don't know your real name. The man was silent. His mother said, You do. Min opened the notebook. He turned back to the cover page. Under the dim light, the line, "Do not let the child carry my family name," became clearer. Beneath it was another line, nearly hidden under smeared ink. Min had not seen it before. He gently brushed away the paper dust. The words appeared.
Le tannant.
Min held his breath. The first name. It had not been meant only for the child. It was his grandfather's name. The name of the father who erased himself from paper so his child could live. The name of the man in the unmarked grave. The name inside the voice that had echoed through Hang Duong for so many years. Min knelt before the grave. His voice shook as he spoke. Grandfather.
Le tannant.
The moment the name was spoken, wind rose from all directions. It was not violent. It was not frightening. It was like one long breath released by the earth itself. The whispers around the cemetery went silent all at once. The incense fragrance softened. The man in the white shirt looked at Min. For the first time, his eyes held peace. Go home, he said. From now on, if you hear your name called, you do not have to be afraid.
Mình cry.
Can't you come with me? The man shook his head. The dead do not need to follow the living. The living only need to remember the road back. His mother's shadow slowly retreated into the incense haze. Min called out, Mom. She looked at him one last time. Do not turn this story into a ghost story, Min. His voice broke. Then how should I tell it? Tell it like lighting incense. Then everything disappeared. Min woke near dawn. He was lying on a stone bench outside the grave section. The notebook was still in his hand. The recorder still hung from his neck. His battery had 1 bar left. The old incense seller, Locke, and a few cemetery staff stood around him. The old woman exhaled when she saw him open his eyes. "You scared me half to death." Min sat up. His throat was dry and raw. "How long was I in there?" Locke checked the time. "Almost 4 hours." Min looked toward the unnamed grave. The first light of morning covered the cemetery in a pale blue color. Everything was peaceful.
No whispers.
No man in a white shirt.
No strange incense smell.
Only burned down sticks of incense. Min opened the notebook. The name Lutanen was still there. The old woman saw it and began to cry. So the name has finally been remembered. Min looked at her. "You knew his name?" She nodded. "I did, but I could not say it first. Some names must be spoken by blood. When an outsider says them, it is only a sound. When family says them, it is a return." For the next few days, Min remained in Con Dao. He worked with the people who managed the historical site and tried to learn more from records, memories, and old stories. Not everything could be proven on paper. Some gaps in history had been erased by time, war, and loss. But the notebook was real. The handkerchief was real. And the audio in Min's recorder was real. When he opened the recording from that night, many parts were filled with noise. Wind, footsteps, his own voice calling for his mother, crying. The strangest part came at the end. After Min said the name Lutanen, the recorder captured a very faint sound. Not a whisper. Not anything monstrous. It sounded like many people exhaling in relief. Then a woman's voice came through. His mother's voice. Very close to the microphone. "Thank you," she said. Min never used that part in any commercial project. He kept it for himself. A month later, Min returned to Saigon. He edited the documentary he had been hired to work on. He did not add horror effects. He did not exaggerate. He did not turn the graves into a cheap scare. But in the sound bed beneath a sunrise shot of Hang Duong Cemetery, he placed a very thin layer of audio. Wind passing through casuarina trees, incense burning softly, and a long stretch of silence. Because he understood something now. Some places do not need too much storytelling. If you are silent long enough, people will hear what they need to hear. 6 months later, Min received a call from Con Dao. It was Locke. His voice sounded strange, both excited and afraid. "Min, did you send anything here?" Min was sitting in his studio. His hand stopped on the mixer. "Send what?" "An envelope."
No sender.
Inside was an old photograph. Min felt a chill move up his back. "What kind of photograph?" Locke was silent for a few seconds. "A photo taken in front of Hang Duong Cemetery. It shows Aunt Sao when she was young, a woman holding a baby, and a man standing behind them." Min gripped the phone. "The man in the white shirt?" "Yes." Min could not speak. Locke continued. "But that is not the strangest part." "What else?"
Min whisper.
You are in the photo.
Mình stood up.
That is impossible. I know, Locke said, but it is you, exactly as you looked that night. Black jacket, recorder hanging from your chest. The studio around Min became very still. Locke went on slowly now. There is handwriting on the back. Min could barely breathe. What does it say? The line was this: the child came home, but the one who called his name was never the dead.
Mình stood frozen.
At that moment, the computer in front of him turned on by itself. No one touched it. The folder copied from the old memory card opened on the screen. The 4 audio files were still there. But now a 5th file had appeared. Its name was min_00h17.wave. He did not want to open it. But the cursor moved on its own. The file began to play. First there was wind. Then footsteps. Then someone breathing very close to the microphone. Min recognized it immediately. It was his own breathing from the night at Hang Duong. But inside the file there was another voice too. A voice very soft. Not his mother. Not his grandfather. Not the old incense seller. It whispered right beside his ear. You thought you came looking for the dead. A pause. Then the voice laughed softly. But the dead were looking for the one who forgot he was still alive. Min stepped back from the desk. The studio lights flickered. A heavy incense smell spread through the sealed room.
No incense, no smoke.
Only the smell. On the screen, the waveform kept moving. The final voice came through clearly and slowly, calling the name he had never used. Min spun around. Behind him, reflected in the black glass of the recording booth, he saw a wide cemetery beneath rows of casuarina trees. And among the graves, a man in a white shirt stood watching him. But this time, the man was not alone. Beside him was a newborn baby wrapped in an old brown handkerchief. The child opened its eyes. It looked straight at Min through the glass. Then it smiled. Not the smile of a baby. The smile of someone who had waited a long time to be born again. Min heard his mother's voice from somewhere far away. Do not answer. But it was too late. In his panic, Min had already said, "Who is there?" Every sound in the studio died. The screen went black. Only one line appeared in cold white letters. Thank you for returning the name. The next morning, Min's co-workers found the studio locked from the inside. The equipment was still running. The chair was still warm. Min's phone lay on the desk. But Min was gone. There were no signs of forced entry. No security camera showed him leaving the building. There was only one new audio file on the computer. Its name was Hang Duong Cemetery. When people opened it, they heard only wind moving through casuarina trees. Incense burning softly. And at the final second, a young man's voice whispered, "Do not call my name anymore." Since then, around 12:17 a.m. at Hang Duong Cemetery, some late-night visitors have said they hear a recorder click on somewhere in the dark. No one ever sees the person holding it. They only hear slow footsteps moving between the graves. Then a young man's voice speaks, polite and quiet, as if he is still working. Please be silent for a moment. I am recording memory. And if someone accidentally asks, "What is your name?" From deep inside the casuarina trees, the voice answers, "Do not ask." Here, names never disappear. Only the living forget.
Hang Duong Cemetery is still there. Peaceful, solemn, sacred. Every day, people still come to light incense, place flowers, and bow before those who gave their lives for their country. But if one night you ever find yourself in Con Dao, if you stand beneath the casuarina trees and suddenly smell incense so strongly, even though there is no smoke, if the wind begins to whisper your name, remember one thing. They may not want to harm you. They may only want to be remembered. But do not answer too quickly. Because in places where memory has never truly slept, a name is not always just something used to call a person. It can be a key, a promise, or a door into a story that once opened may not let you return with the same name you had before.